Hello YouTube, it's Shadow Hero 90, welcoming you to my review series, Sexism in Movies and TV, where I peel back the lie of equality that modern-day Hollywood claims exists and reveal the hidden misandry and gynocentrism within both television and in cinema. You know, the entertainment industry has really been against men, and it's the kind of thing, as of late, that has been very relevant. As in, I've kind of been bashing Hollywood for things that people are now just criticizing certain franchises for. I've even spoken to some fans directly who actually have ended up admitting that I was right about certain characters being horrid and awful. And those are just some of the reasons as to why I do this show and why this series is a good thing. Another reason as to why I do this series is the fact that there are no good role models for young men and little boys on American TV. They have all vanished. The terrible role models, yeah, they're there in spades. But the good role models, not so much. They're either being taken off the air, restricted to anime, or moved to Adult Swim. Where, on the other hand, the amount of good role models for girls is also lagging when it comes to American TV, while our good role models for girls, they, for the most part, are restricted to anime. While on the other hand, there's no shortage of bad role models for girls. Truth be told, I would not be surprised if a lot of the people who write this garbage actually want young girls to grow up to be complete assholes, because they are given no good role models. I know a lot of these clowns say it's in the name of progress, and with the example being set by a lot of these characters, little girls in the real world are going to progress in the area of being toxic bitches. I've talked to people on this matter, and I have heard a lot of other people on YouTube bring this up, and they agree with me for the most part. So, those are actually two really good reasons as to why I do this show. And why, when it comes to television, more specifically American television. We need a men's rights revolution. In this episode, I will be ripping apart the Married with Children episode, No Ma'am. And not only is what I'm ripping apart something that got worse and worse as time went on, but this is going to be one of those episodes. The type of episode where I will be giving you a recap of what happened in it, and then I will be telling you every single thing wrong with it. And with that said and done, let's start with the review. Okay, this episode basically revolves around this setup. This jackass, the masculine feminist, is basically getting women all over town riled up. And then, for no reason, Marcy goes down to the shoe store that Al Bundy works at and basically eggs him on until he breaks and compares her to a chicken, just so she can complain to the manager and cause him to lose his parking spot. And knowing Al Bundy, he eventually breaks and gives in. Instead of doing something like, I don't know, going down to the bank where Marcy works and harassing her, or telling her boss what he did and that he's never going to deposit his money there or potentially boycott them. Instead, Al Bundy founds the organization No Ma'am, and more or less, well, they eventually attack the talk show hosted by the masculine feminist and make their demands like terrorists, and basically say if their demands aren't met, they will perform the very first live sexorcism. Marcy shows up at the studio and makes some threat, and the members of No Ma'am change their name to Yes Ma'am and run off like cowards. The end. This whole thing is a grotesque parody of anyone who has a problem with feminism. It's a grotesque parody of the men's rights movement and a grotesque parody of MGTOW. If you were to replace man in this situation with any minority outside of white, I guarantee you would be lynched. And I'm not lying when I say that this show is fucking biased. It is biased as all hell. In this episode, what Marcy does is a textbook definition of harassment, as well as, in a weird way, psychological warfare. She knew Al would eventually break and insult her by calling her a chicken, and more or less run crying to the manager of the shoe store to get Al in trouble, specifically so he would lose his parking spot. No Ma'am appears in the episode where Al was trying to turn it into a religion just so he could lower the price of his beer. Had that been the plot, then this ending would have been a lot more acceptable. If this jackass had essentially been, I don't know, say someone who's trying to make sure people aren't driving drunk to the point where he's trying to force it on people, as opposed to an asshole who's supporting a hateful ideology that always had blood on its hands. If that were the case, this ending wouldn't have been the flaming turd that it was. Okay, I'm just gonna say this. Al really did nothing wrong in this episode. If anything, he didn't really do anything worse than what he usually does. I guess he let it slip to Peggy that he was warned by his boss that if he tells off one more fat woman, he will lose his parking spot, and that the jokes at the expense of the customers has to end here, even though we know it won't, because that was a running gag on Married with Children. Marcy finds this out, most likely through Peggy, and since Marcy is basically just a parasite leeching off the blood of America, she goes down to the shoe store to harass Al for no reason. I said earlier that this is a textbook case of harassment. Well, she had no motivation other than to harass him to do this. I don't remember if Al did anything to trigger her, but in previous episodes, she's done a lot of things that have either caused Al Bundy pain or directly pissed him off. And the worst thing about this episode, well, second to worst, outside of the men's rights parody, was the fact that they let Marcy win in the end. And that isn't me looking too deep into things or overanalyzing. Here's a complete breakdown of the episode. Marcy finds out that Al will lose his parking spot if he enrages a customer. She goes to the shoe store, specifically to harass him, by making a bunch of chicken jokes, claiming she feels like she's got to lay an egg, specifically to throw on psychological torture, knowing that Al Bundy will break and basically crack a joke about Marcy being a chicken, which this all happens off screen, and we know that. Al Bundy forming an anti-feminist terrorist group. They take this local TV jackass hostage and threaten to perform a sexorcism. And then Marcy goes down to the studio and delivers a threat to Al Bundy's face. I forget what it is, but it scares him off. The end. In other words, they let the person guilty of harassment win in the end. Al did nothing wrong at the start of this episode, but Marcy is apparently allowed to harass him and get away with it scot-free. Apparently, the writers were so biased that they didn't think that consequences ever applied to this liberal little cunt. Okay, this is the part of the review where I was going to mention the future appearances of the terrorist or activist group No Ma'am. But, yeah, that's something that I am going to save for next season. You know that the idiots who wrote Married with Children have an axe to grind against men when I have to do that. Al Bundy suffered a lot in this episode, and usually that isn't something I have a problem with. For instance, the episode where Al Bundy bought a classic 1950s car. It was the type he always wanted, but could never afford. And he worked on it, personally spruced it up, gave it a new paint job, new engine. And yes, he did buy the car, but then we find out that it's stolen, and he actually tries to fight back. And this idiot then gets his just desserts when he gets tasered and arrested by the police. Therefore, Al Bundy brought this upon himself. The problem with this episode is that Al Bundy doesn't really do anything that's out of the ordinary for him to warrant the punishment. In this case, he was just doing nothing, and Marcy showed up to harass him just 'cause she could. No different than a common bully. You know, on this series, I often ask the question to you, the viewers on this show, of what would this scenario look like if the genders were swapped, or it was the man doing it to the woman in this case. And with the help of ChatGPT, I can actually do that in this case. And now you're going to see what it would look like if Al Bundy actually took the right course of action against Marcy Darcy and gave her a taste of her own medicine.
Int bowling alley, night out to his friends. Well, fellas, it's official. No man is deader than my hopes and dreams after high school. Thanks to Pegzilla and that nag Marcy Darcy, our last rally turned into a circus. Who knew you could be booed out of a bowling alley? Slim Al, we can't let this slide. That Marcy Darcy, she's like a human rain cloud. She ruined everything. Al, I hear you, Slim. That's why we're taking this fight to her lair. The bank. I'm sick of her treating us like dirt while Peggy sits home burning my paycheck on useless junk. Tomorrow we're going to show that bank manager who's boss. Inty Bank Day. Al and his friends stand at the counter, proudly wearing their No Man shirts. The nervous bank manager watches as they rant. Al, listen up, Mr. Moneybags. Your employee, that spoiled brat Marcy Darcy, has been nothing but rude to us hard-working men. She called us slackers and then threw the word Neanderthal around like she's a history professor, bank manager. Gentlemen, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. Slim. Oh, it's no misunderstanding. I got the emotional scars to prove it. She threatened us with slander. Al, yeah. And let me tell you something. If Marcy Darcy's still working here, you can kiss our deposits goodbye. Not that I ever have much to deposit, but that's beside the point. The manager sighs, wipes his forehead, and picks up the phone. Bank manager, Mrs. Darcy, can you come to my office? Now. Moments later, Marcy Darcy storms in, looking furious and professional. Marcy Darky. What is it this time? Did Al try to cash a coupon for dignity again? Al, real funny, Marcy. Guess what? You're about to have a lot more time to come up with zingers, because you're fired. Bank manager. Actually, Mrs. Darcy, after reviewing several complaints, we're going to have to let you go. You're firing me? Me? Because of him? This man spends more time losing at life than winning at shoe sales. Al, hey, I once sold a pair of shoes to a living woman. Thank you very much. Marcy Darcy. This is outrageous. I'll have you know my husband Jefferson will sue this place into the Stone Age. Bank manager. He'd have to wake up first. Marcy glares, grabs her box of belongings, and storms out. Al, noise. Gentlemen, justice is served, medium rare and delicious. Now who's up for Denny's? They cheer as Al leads the no-man crew out the door. Int, Bundy household, living room day. Al bursts through the door, shirt stained with syrup and belly noticeably rounder. He belches triumphantly and waves his empty wallet like a trophy. Peggy! What's that smell? It's like maple syrup? Regret and cholesterol? That peg is the sweet scent of victory. I took the no-man boys out to Denny's with our hard-earned reimbursement. We feasted like kings. Pancakes, bacon, bottomless coffee, you name it. You name it. You spent all the money on Denny's? It wasn't just any meal. It was a victory feast. We dethroned Marcy Darcy Peg. That's worth at least 2 Grand Slams and an order of hash browns. So you're telling me you quit your job, spent all our money on pancakes, and now expect me to, what? Knit us a roof over our heads? Al, relax, Peg. It's simple. You get a job. I get to relax for once. Everybody wins. Me, work, over my teased hair and dead body. Day, Peggy, and Marcy Darcy miserably scan groceries at the local supermarket. A long line of housewives watches, unimpressed. Housewife number 1. Hey, Peg, isn't it about time you learned how to use the scanner? Or are you too busy sitting on your behind at home? Peggy, listen, lady, I'm a career woman now. Cut me some slack. Housewife. Number 2, career? Honey, you're holding up the line more than my kids hold up their grades. And Marcy Darcy, aren't you supposed to be some big shot banker? What happened? Finally drove the manager nuts? I'm here temporarily. It's not like I've sunk to your level of shopping for discount coupons. Peggy and Marcy exchange a look of mutual suffering as the line of housewives continues to heckle them.
And that was the episode No Ma'am. A steaming turd that came from an insanely sexist show. Something that's completely un-American and should have never made it onto the airwaves. I do have more to say about this piece of crap, but I'm going to be ending this video by saying that everything else I have to say about this insult to tolerance is part of a video that I'll be uploading next season.